Order, order. Welcome to this session of the Foreign Affairs Committee as part of our Counter-Terrorism inquiry. Today we'll be looking at Somalia, the Sahel and West Africa, and we're very fortunate to be joined by three wonderful experts. We're very grateful to you all for taking the time. Yes, Mr. Deary.
I'm Nuruddin Deary. I'm a senior advisor at the European Institute for Peace, but I've been working in and around Somalia for the last 30 years.
Nuruddin, your assessment really of what does this greater Somalia Islamic State look like that Al-Shabaab talks about in its publications and flashy videos?
Well, Al-Shabaab is an Al-Qaeda affiliate. It has a global agenda, even though nowadays it acts more as a nationalist domestic organization, but still the original allegiance with Al-Qaeda exists. They do have foreign elements within them. They do want to create an Islamic State in Somalia and also be part of the global caliphate state where they run the country and perhaps the world with their version of Sharia. In terms of how they view Somalia, they don't recognize the modern state borders of Somalia. For them, Somalia is the greater Somalia, including parts of Ethiopia, parts of Kenya. And they have shown to have ambitions beyond also greater Somalia, where they are willing and also capable and have demonstrated to carry out operations in East Africa as far as Tanzania. Today, Al-Shabaab is the most successful, I think, Al-Qaeda affiliate after the setback in Syria and Iraq. And in fact, they are so successful that I mean, there has been evidence that they are actually externally supporting some other organization regionally. So they do not receive money externally, but they are in a position to actually...
I push you on who it is they're supporting regionally.
Organizations in East Africa, like the one in Tanzania, the one in Kenya, as well as operations that they do in Ethiopia. But so, as Roger said, they become financially viable in becoming more successful in collecting their revenue from Somalia. The communities, even when they're making deals with them, know the capacity for retribution that Al-Shabaab has. And as Dr. Nizar suggested, it is because of the weakness of the government and because they can't get protection from the government, they are almost coerced into having relationship or deals with Al-Shabaab, where in isolated situations, areas where Al-Shabaab controls or surrounds them. But at the basis of it, I say it's a coercion, and Al-Shabaab hasn't really won the narrative of convincing the majority of the Somali public to agree with their own version of Islamic State. And the evidence to prove that is every time a small town or a district is liberated by AMISOM or by the federal government forces, they turn around and against Al-Shabaab. It's important to recognize that Al-Shabaab are not present in the majority of Somalia. There are areas in the north, Puntland and Somaliland, that constitute about 50% of Somalia that they have never been there, apart from small pockets. They've never controlled anywhere in Somaliland and Puntland. The reason why they are not in Somaliland and why they are not in Puntland is the people of Somaliland and the people of Puntland do not want them, period.
When we look at Somaliland and Puntland, it's not necessarily just a case of Shabaab weakness there as well. It's a case of strong and effective political settlements. More than governance systems in Somaliland and Puntland, and these are not perfect by any way, and there are many challenges there, of course, but these are political settlements that have roots in the community, both at the elite level and to a reasonable degree at the sort of more general population level. And that gives them a strength to resist something like Al-Shabaab, which is lacking, I think it's fair to say, in areas further south in Somalia, and that creates space for Shabaab. And when Shabaab are able to provide, as colleagues have mentioned several times, effective governance mechanisms, and if you take this question of checkpoints, if you're traveling from Kismayo to Mogadishu, Shabaab will give you one receipt for your truck to make that journey. If you go on routes controlled by the federal government, you'll get a receipt and make a payment at every single checkpoint. So there's a difference both in efficiency as well. Yeah.
I mean, they are providing that order as means of control. I mean, to those communities, and I think. As Dr. Najib suggested, is out of the weakness of the government and out of desperation, the communities will toe line. But the social leadership of those communities, the political leadership, the elites of those communities are not in those areas. They are refugees or IDPs in Mogadishu or in other safe areas where Al-Shabaab do not control. I mean, that in itself, I think, is a further evidence that it is not by consensus, but the basic tactics that they use, or by retribution, by coercion, by not getting on the wrong side of Al-Shabaab while there is no government to rescue you, it's what's keeping most of the people toe their line in their areas they control.
AMISOM have been trying to defeat Al-Shabaab for 15 years and have failed. Why is that?
I wouldn't say they failed.
They've not succeeded then.
Not fully succeeded.
They haven't completed the job. If we can do this, I mean, AMISOM have been successful in taking control of large swathes of Somali territories from Al-Shabaab. Of course, it's not only AMISOM. There were also other international counter-terrorist activities that were also supporting them. However, where they are now, you're right, they're not completing the job. Al-Shabaab still controls, I would say, about 30% of Somalia, largely in the south central, mostly or all of it in the south central of Somalia, including some districts and some areas that they directly control, and then some main supply routes between different districts that they control that people cannot move freely. But with the pressure of resources and the pressure of time, because AMISOM is about to withdraw also at the end of 2024, I think that makes the job more complex. And the Somali government will need support. Somalia cannot do it alone. And one of the worst case scenario for me is after 20 years of huge and significant international support and investment to Somalia, we get into a scenario of abandonment that we've seen elsewhere, and that would be, the nightmare scenario. And I think the UK government can play a role in supporting the Somali government to achieve that kind of a sustained support. Obviously, the same mission cannot continue, but some sort of support that Somalia will want in order to take the responsibility.
You mentioned resources. Is it simply a resource issue, or are there flaws with the strategy and tactics?
Well, I think it's all of the above, but also in addition to that, AMISOM is a formidable foe. It's not. They have shown to be robust. They have shown to be adaptable. They have shown to be very resilient, as we've been talking about all day. And it takes more resources. It takes better strategies. I agree with you, and it also takes longer commitment. It is from now on, I think it's the Somali government that needs to take the responsibility, and the current president is taking the fight to Al-Shabaab, mobilizing all Somalis to make the fighting a Somali-owned, but definitely Somalia cannot do it alone. AMISOM has done some progress, some successes. The Somali government has done some successes. I don't think we can aim to have an ideal, inclusive, democratic process in Somalia akin to Switzerland at the moment. But I think the Somali government will have the capabilities to contain. I wouldn't say with the current resource commitment and with the current timing, defeating Al-Shabaab is certain. But what is more certain, I think, and what's more feasible is a containment, even if AMISOM troops or ATMIS troops leave Somalia. But that will need some sort of both bilateral and multilateral support to the Somali government, some logistical and specialized training support to Somalia. But as an advocate of a peacemaking organization, I also think part of the formula should be a long-term dialogue, because military solution will not be the only card on the table. And the Somali government sometimes needs a diplomatic support to encourage, but also to give sort of a support that they can actually engage in some sort of dialogue with Al-Shabaab.
How much of a threat do you consider Daesh Somalia to be, and do you expect that threat to become more significant?
I think Daesh are more limited than Al-Shabaab. They are geographically constrained in the northeast of Somalia, in the mountains of Puntland, and they do carry some operations in one particular city, call it Bosaso, the port city of Bosaso. We haven't seen a lot of evidence on them increasing, even though they try from time to time to research, but they haven't been having much success like Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab sees them as a nuisance as well. From time to time there is a conflict between them. I wish that could be encouraged, but I don't see them to be their threat to be more serious. I don't know if you agree with.
No.